like if you could do it by phone, that would be great. But
Okay.
we're being live streamed. So, okay, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, hey there. Yeah. Are we ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Well, hey there, Dawnmarie. Thank you so much for being here today with me on the Confident Sober Women podcast. I'm so excited to share you and your story and your work with our audience today. So I'm going to turn the mic over to you, let you share a little bit more about your story, and then we're going to talk.
Sure. Hi, I'm Dawnmarie Risley-Childs. I'm a board certified psychiatrist, and I've been practicing for 30 years and transitioning out of that realm into physician coaching. I'm also an author, a keynote speaker, I continue to write and contribute. So, a little bit about my journey. So, I was the victim, the survivor of 24 years of physical, emotional, sexual, financial abuse, domestic violence, from birth until I was 24 when I left for medical school. And that medical school saved me. So, medical school saved my life and allowed me to have a lucrative career, and which eventually, brought me out to California. And several years ago, um, I reached a point where I just said, enough is enough. I need to do something about the trauma myself. I can't just keep treating other people for trauma and knowing what does work and what doesn't work. And I started venturing into the psychedelic medicine range of getting treatment through that avenue.
Mhm. That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And it's such a vulnerable experience, when we step back into some parts of our stories. And but I know that I know for sure, being in the recovery world for so long, and I'm sure that you do as well, that that's truly how it works, right? I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
when we show up in the world and we not everybody wants to recover out loud, and that's okay. You don't have to, but
Right.
when some of us do, it's so magical what happens for other people because they suddenly start to feel, not alone. They
Mm-hmm.
can connect, they can relate, they understand, like, oh my gosh, I don't have to do this by myself. Other people have done this, and maybe I can too. Gives people hope. Um, so I'm curious if you, I know that you said you experienced that, all of that abuse, and you kind of laid it out so well. And was that a marriage, I guess, or a relationship?
So I was trafficked very early on by my father and my brothers, and my mother was certainly involved or getting me involved in her sexcapades. My stepfather was brutal and does meet criteria for what's known as psychopathy.
Mm,
And I really feel at this point, I think that my mother used my stepfather to brutalize me and to brutalize my brothers
mm,
as much as she could. Um, it took me until it's been about 3 years now that I finally said goodbye to my mother for
mm,
good.
mm,
We always hold on to that hope that our moms are going to change. Mom's going to see how much she hurt me.
mm.
Right now, it appears to be a very active culture of cutting off our parents,
Yes.
and the parents are fighting back. Oh, my child doesn't speak to me. Why doesn't my child speak to me? But they're selfish, but they've yet to look back in the mirror and say, okay, how did I cause this? What did I do that was so bad
Mhm.
that my kid doesn't even want to speak to me anymore or any longer? And, for my mother, you know, we each come with our own set of boundaries. And when other people blow through those boundaries, that could be such a violation. And what we really need that to the point where you put 3,000 miles between you and the person who's blowing through those boundaries, or you stop calling, or you just have to cut off completely. And, despite all of those boundary settings that I was doing with my mother, it wasn't working. And it was to a point where I said, okay, she's a dangerous woman and I need to eliminate this from my life. And that's what I had to do. But so many people will say, but she's mom, but she's our mother. Yeah, bullshit. It doesn't matter. Your mom has a job. Your mom is to take care of you. Your mom is to love you. Your mom is to make sure that you're fed, that you're nurtured, and giving you the tools that you need to get out there and be independent. And we're not perfect. No one's perfect. I'm not a perfect mother. I've got improvements. Up the wazoo that I need to make. I know that. But I love that my kids keep giving me a chance.
Right. And thank you so much for bringing up that topic. It's actually been something that's been on my mind and heart and really a lot over the last couple of years because of the trend that you're referring to for going no contact. There certainly is a humongous trend via like social media, and it all seems to be like these kind of 30 something millennials, I guess, or the next ones below that. A lot of that, maybe into their 40s generation. It's like this whole thing. And it's given me a lot of time to think about and consult with some other people. I've had a conversation with another professional who's living that as well, like on the other side, like not on the other side from you, is also a therapist, a mental health therapist, and just, kind of has shared some of her experiences and some other people in my life, like people I know personally who have family members or different things. And it's very interesting. Um, because while I do think that for sure you're right, like when there are violations that are so profound,
Yeah,
that are so clearly, violations of our personal safety, of our like neglect of our medical care. I mean, when
exactly.
the parents are not providing the basic, like legally bound provisions for their children, which is what we are called to do. Like we are called to keep our children safe, to
Yep.
educate them. There are certain things. And then, of course, there's the above and beyond stuff, right? Of course, we are, because there's no legal obligation to love your children, or even like give them money, right? But that's obviously what most of us want to do.
Right.
But when your parents are not you can't count on them to protect you, your actual safety, like what you're describing,
Right.
or they're so physically abusive or mentally abusive in ways that are just, very profound and would really enter into places like my office that look like pretty high levels of trauma. I can totally see why that's a thing, right? Like
Yeah.
it makes sense. And also from when you talk to I worked in foster care in the beginning part of my career in the Department of Social Services. And like I was very young, but like, I was there for a long time and when I worked with mostly older youth, and even some of these kids who had some of the most horrific things happen to them and done to them that anybody could ever experience, they longed for their parents. They
Yes, they
wanted,
did.
they
Yes,
want their moms. They
exactly.
want it. And so I got to see that and what that really looks like. So it helped me understand like, oh, nobody, like people who are like that or like what you're describing are not making that decision lately. You're trying, you made a lot of effort. What I
Yes.
think is happening, and I don't want to get on this tangent because we have other things to talk about, but when I'm curious, like what I think is interesting is the other parts, right? Because there's a whole lot of stuff that's happening that maybe are people that do not meet that criteria, and it gives me pause, right? Because it makes me think like, you know, do you know what like the word like what does the word abuse mean to you? Like, right? Or what does neglect mean? I mean, we can pull up the dictionary definition, right? But like
Hmm.
everybody has their own perception of that. And I think there's oftentimes things that go on, or at least my experience of what I've seen, where it isn't those kinds of profound situations, but it's something else happening.
Yeah.
And these like expectations get placed on parents, and behavior and things that are just really not in that same scope. Do you know what I mean?
I think so. There are,
Okay.
there are the everyday quandaries that we all have, that we have with our kids. My children are teenagers, so of course I get
I
lip.
yeah.
Um, I get, they're pushing their boundary. They're pushing my boundaries because that is a normal part of growing up.
Hmm.
What is my response? Sometimes my response is out of control. Sometimes my response is yelling because I don't feel heard. I'm triggered by whatever their response is. Okay, what do I need to do? I need to pull back and I need to come up with a different approach to prevent this from happening. And I'll tell you one thing that I've been using AI a lot.
Yes.
Because it will go through all of the literature that says this is how you handle these situations. And so for the past couple days, my son has trouble waking up in the morning,
Mm.
and it's yelling and screaming at me, and I'm awake, and just it's
Mhm.
horrible. What a horrible way to start the morning, right? So I put in AI, like, how do I improve this? How do I
Yeah.
make this better? And
Yeah.
it's well, start with some gentle touch. Go up and gently rock him, gently wake him up. Okay, wait until, all right. So this morning it was, okay, baby, you got to get up. I'm awake. Your eyes are closed. No, they're not. They're open. Like, really?
Mhm.
How many fingers am I holding up? Three, two. Oh, you're just guessing. That's the kind of game that we played this morning.
Yeah.
And yesterday was a good day. It was a good morning for me. Today
Mhm.
was a little edgy, but not nearly to the point where it has been in the past. And both kids got off to school on time. Both kids are awake. They're getting better regulated. Things are, you just keep plugging and figuring it out and
Yeah.
be flexible to knowing what does and does not work. And we always say, don't take it personally. How can you not? But you got to kind of remove your ego from parenthood, because your ego will be challenged all the time. And you're more than your ego, for sure.
Yeah, I have three children. They're 22, 20, and 18 now. So I've been there, done that. And I
Yeah.
have that same kid with the morning. And, and then there's something also to be said for raising our kids with a lot of autonomy, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
creating a lot of autonomy and independence looks like, natural consequences, or at least it does in my world.
Exactly.
And so,
Exactly.
there's many times when that particular child um, did not make it to school. And, we had lots of therapists tell us,
Walk.
let her do it.
Yeah.
And that was really hard for two people who are have very strong work ethic and do not miss things like that. We do not take
Yeah.
that lightly. And it's very, very, very hard to watch.
Yeah.
But in the end, like hopefully, and even if it doesn't go well or you don't get like a positive result at the end, like your child isn't successful, whatever that looks like to you, like there is a something that happens there. You're
Yeah.
still holding to like a thing that says, this is what we are defining in our family as good parenting. And good
Right.
parenting looks like we're going to hold you accountable for your actions. And that's kind of why I brought all that up, is that so often
Yeah.
what I'm seeing is these young people and then their own children and things are basically looking back on their childhoods and picking apart some of these things that their parents have done or not done and kind of making it abuse or making it unacceptable and I just find it to be really disturbing, frankly.
Yeah.
And then not only is it disturbing, but if you have children in your life and now you are doing that to your parent, you're basically telling your children that's fine to do that. Like it's fine.
Right.
It's fine for you to
Exactly.
cut
And
me off.
it's not.
So
And you do have,
so when you don't like me or what I do, which is most likely going to be good parenting, discipline, expectations, rules, things like that, you can
exactly.
just cut me off too.
Firm boundaries are the most loving thing that you can do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that means even with the schools, that
Yeah.
means with their friends, that means with what they watch, what they post, keeping an eye on things, making sure that, you've got to have those boundaries. Boundaries keep us safe, boundaries keep us regulated, boundaries keep other people from abusing us. Because if we blow through our children's boundaries, then they're always going to have the expectations that other adults can blow through their boundaries too. and that they just have to accept that. And,
Yeah.
right now I've been processing the men in my life, and I'm starting, right there from my first grade boyfriend. Okay, what happened with my first grade boyfriend? What happened
Mhm.
with my second grade boyfriend? Well, I didn't have a third grade boyfriend, but, this boy was mean to me, and this is what happened. And I'm going through those things to look at where did the breakdown occur? What was going on? How did I feel? And how did I get out of that? And, was my body ever my own starting from, toddlerhood? And the answer was no. And those boundaries are things that I'm learning now to keep and to hold.
Right.
And your podcast, you talk to a lot of people who are in recovery. How many of those people who are in recovery have been sexually abused, physically abused, emotionally abused, um, didn't have any finance autonomy?
Mhm.
For me, it was all of those. It was everything.
Yeah.
So not everyone has that. One thing I think that was positive in my life, and maybe even a little bit too positive, was that my parents had strong work ethics. So my mother was very hardworking. She kept the house clean. She kept my stepfather working. She ran his business. He was going out and doing the jobs and bringing home the money. But I saw them work.
Yeah.
And so I applied that same work ethic to my studies. And I've always had a little bit of, there's always been that one little piece of information that I would get that would focus me so that I would work really hard towards that and use it.
Mhm.
And, my brother had said to me, oh, with grades like these, you'll get scholarships to college. And I was thinking, great. I'm going to get straight A's. I want to graduate in the top of my class so that I get scholarships so that I can go to school and I can leave.
Right.
It didn't all pan out that way. I mean, I was also dealing with trauma and abuse every day. So how well can you function while you're in that? And that was, of course, the traps that were set and the expectations of it. Really, I think, tells me exactly what I am made of. And for the I've been complaining about my stamina for a very long time, at least since my internship. Physicians are brutally abused. They really
Yes.
are.
Mhm.
And when I was in internship, I remember standing there waiting for the light to turn green, thinking it was the third Saturday that I was working and thinking, I am exhausted. What is life going to be like as an OBGYN resident? It's going to be 10 times worse than this internship that I have right now.
Mhm.
And I pivoted. I did psychiatry instead. I really liked psychiatry. It's certainly the thing that it had a natural wave for me, given the trauma that I experienced. But most recently, I just said to myself, wait a minute, it's not that I don't have stamina. It's just that the stuff that I'm doing, I'm carrying the load that's beyond any person's physical, mental, emotional capacity, and I'm still doing it anyway. Imagine what's going to happen in my life when I let go of that load. And that's
Mhm.
really been what this journey is about, and where the forgiveness has come through. That's forgiveness part that's in my book that I talk about, is that forgiveness is allowing you to let go of that trauma, of that abuse, that I don't have to carry this anymore. Let me dump this off and put it over here.
Yeah.
And now my energy is so much more.
Mm.
And that's where I am. Yeah.
And that makes so much sense. We know
Mm-hmm.
that the body holds trauma differently than the brain does. And
Yeah.
so when we use neurologically based approaches like EMDR therapy, which is what I use in neurofeedback in my practice, or things like CAP, you mentioned psychedelics, using, ketamine assisted psychotherapy with integration with EMDR integration. I mean, these
Mm-hmm.
are the kinds of things personally, in my opinion, like the only kinds of things that really will truly heal the brain at the molecular level and like release that
Yeah,
trauma from the stored trauma from our bodies, because it's
exactly.
not the same as our brains. It's both of things are important, but we need both of those releases so that then, yes, you are way more free. The load is like lifted, your body is not carrying and holding on to that, whether it's manifesting in a actual pain or you're not
Mhm.
even aware of it. Um, it's critical. So I'm really glad that you're able to experience, like that you've experienced that, and now you're able to kind of know the other side of it. Now,
Yeah.
we never arrive. We're all always under
No,
construction,
we
and we're
arrive when we're dead. We're dead.
yeah, that's what I
That's
say.
the arrival, right? That's the
Yeah.
end. That's your destination is death. But what do you do between that? And in the between that, as we do heal, healing is a constant journey. And you're right about how things are held in our bodies. I've experienced that firsthand of having a right ovary completely shut down and at risk for not being able to have children, and the physical pain that occurred in various aches and pains of my body.
Hmm.
And, what is that weighing upon my shoulders that is causing my thoracic outlet? It's not just a repetitive injury, it's also more than that.
Yeah.
That's the integration that medicine needs to embrace.
Oh, right.
And,
Yeah.
I'm a DO, I'm a doctor of osteopathic
Mhm.
medicine. So as a DO, we've learned about the body and more intimately, and diagnosing things with our hand, diagnosing illness with our hands, and looking at that somatic visceral dysfunction and visceral somatic dysfunction and somatic dysfunction. These are how does the body on the exterior affect the interior? How does the interior affect the exterior? And there are certainly areas in me that when I released that trauma under psychedelic medicine, that I felt as though I had an organ surgically removed from me. That the nerves took several days. It's That's where the psychedelic medicine for me has been. It goes into the deepest, darkest areas of where you store that trauma.
Hmm.
That it wasn't just that you closed that door. It's that it was behind a vault.
Yeah.
It's behind that bank vault. And when it's brought out and released, wow, you're so much lighter. You're so much lighter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally get it. And it's a wonderful thing being a practitioner of those kinds of modalities, because I literally have the pleasure of working with people, like literally watching that happen
Yeah.
in front of my eyes. And it's so amazing when you can see like from the beginning to the end, and you're like, oh, wow, okay. You
There's a
know,
technique that was implemented by a DO. It's called fascial distortion model. So they
Mhm.
they find the pain points. It's patient led treatment. Uh, the way the patient points at that treatment or points at where their pain is tells you the type of pathology behind it.
Mm,
And when that space is released, it hurts beyond belief when you actually get it. But then when it's released,
mm.
people have a big smile on their face because of that relief. I myself had treatment done several years ago when I was physically impaired. I couldn't walk upstairs. Now I live in a 3-story house. So I was able
Yeah.
to I was able to buy that, right? So I'm curious. I would love to see the FDN people work together
Yeah.
with people who are doing psychedelic medicine so
Mhm.
that they can physically release those areas of a person to see if healing comes out
Mhm.
faster, if we can speed up the process a bit.
Yeah.
So I think we might be onto something in that realm.
Oh, we're definitely onto something.
We're onto
I think
something. We're onto a
I think
lot.
we've been onto something for many decades, probably hundreds of years. If you look back at Chinese medicine, they've given us many tools through acupuncture and food and
Yes.
nutraceuticals. We already have had a lot of that. It's just
Yeah.
that, you bring it in here and you add it to, drug companies and whoever else that kind of messes it all up. But like
Yeah.
now with 10 plus years of all this incredible brain research, MRI studies, and like literally looking at those receptors and where things show up in the brain and kind of pointing to how, trauma shows up very similar to, drugs and alcohol. Those
Mhm.
same kinds of things get lit up, just like sugar, there's always going to be forces against us,
Right,
like
of
the
course.
sugar industry doesn't want us to know that or to
Right.
promote that, right? The food industry doesn't want us to stop making those food ingredients that are hurting us, right? Because so we're always fighting, I feel like upstream, but the more we can get education out to, that's part of the reason why I do the show and talk to people like you. It's part of the reason why I bring this up. This comes up in my work, mental health as part of that's part of my psychosocial, right? We discuss your health and your behaviors with food
Exactly.
and movement and all of it because, we're not just one diagnosis. We're not just anxiety. We're not just depression. We're not just mental health. We are a
We're a
whole
whole
body
person.
functioning
Exactly.
together, just like you're
Exactly.
saying. And so the more we can educate people about it, the more we spread the word, right? And just educate people, point people to, books and podcasts and providers like you who are functioning in that way, the better it's going to be. Like then the just message just spreads out, right?
But we want to do a little more than just functioning. We really want to thrive.
Oh,
And
yeah.
having, if you keep doing the same work, I'm at the point where I'm no longer practicing psychiatry. And there's a reason behind that. It's not because I'm lazy, it's not because I don't want to.
Mhm.
It's because as I continue to get the exposure to the traumatic stories that the patients tell me, that shield, my heart is wide open right now. That shield's not there. I keep getting affected. I keep getting absorbing those stories. And I have secondary trauma from patients. It's not something that I ever expected that I would have, certainly when I started psychiatry, but it has been the effect. And so therefore, I'm pivoting to do something
Yeah.
else. Yeah.
And that's wonderful. Like you get to do
Hmm.
that. It's
Yeah.
wonderful to live in a place that allows that for you, where you
Yeah.
get to literally create and be whatever you want, really. And I think that's really cool. Um, and I know in part of your work, the somatic work you've done. So what kind of psychedelic treatment are you engaged in? Because I know very little about some of them, but I definitely know some more about like ketamine and
Yeah.
cap. So I'm
Yeah,
curious.
so there's so ketamine is what I first I had several ketamine inductions that were done intravenously by a former anesthesiologist, emergency room doctor who does research on ketamine down in Florida. I'm in California, so he's in Florida, and he does their ketamine works on about 23 different receptors in the body. So while there were some things that it did help me with, it helped my irritable bowel. It helped, I was getting cluster headaches. My cluster headaches went away. It helped stop rumination. It helped, there were just so many different things that it helped with. But it also gave me tinnitus.
Mhm.
And while I went in there not feeling suicidal, I left having short waves of feeling suicidal and then feeling better, and then short waves of feeling suicidal and then better. Just those things were kind of coming up for me. And I think after the second set of treatment, I realized, no, I need something more.
Mm.
And I've been talking to a friend who lives in Florida, and I had noticed a difference in him and his attitude. And he had told me, he's like, look, you got to go get yourself some golden teacher. I'm like, what is that? He's like, oh, that's mushrooms. I didn't know anything about this. I was very naive to these things. And I live in Mendocino. I'm surrounded by pot farms. The industry is here.
Yes.
And I called a few people that I knew that were in the industry, and they led me to my healer. And I had no idea what I was up against, what was, going to happen. I just thought I was going to get a couple mushrooms and get high on mushrooms and be done, and everything was going to be okay. Oh, no, 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 no. That's
Mhm.
not it at all. And I don't recommend anyone to think that you're going to just go do some mushrooms and everything's going to be better, because it's not going to happen.
Mhm.
It's serious work. It's a deep dive. You want to make sure you're with someone who really does have a lot of experience with the materials and with therapy. MAPS does have, maps.org has training for people for therapists who want to get involved in this type of medicine.
Mhm.
It's a lot of hard work. The first trip was beautiful. It was just, I was just laying in bed, listening to some gorgeous music, and it was like this gorgeous light show with my eyes closed. It was amazing. I understood so much architecture at that point, and began to understand art better and where these patterns come from. And then you'll realize, oh, this is why everybody in the 60s was tie-dyeing. Like, okay, now I get it. So it wasn't just because it looked pretty, it was because we wanted to have those visuals returned to us and
Mhm.
to see them all the time when we're not stoned on mushrooms. So, um, but it got down to some areas and some of those wounded places, and it allowed me to be angry with my mother for the first time,
Mhm. Mhm.
because I really thought that if I were angry with my mother, that it would just kill her.
Mhm.
That it was, and I don't know where I got those thoughts from.
Yeah.
And I think that when we look at our parents, as we touched on earlier, we want nothing more than the love of our parents. So if we're
Mhm.
angry with them, we're afraid that we're going to chase their love away. But in reality, when you have a mother like mine, it wasn't an easy thing for me to be able to sit there and come out and say, yes, I remember the time when she kicked me out of bed, and this was the thing that I went to go do with the man that she brought home. And I was only 4 or 5 years old. I had to have been in kindergarten.
Mhm.
It's to even be able to admit to these kinds of disgusting things that were done to you, just as a little kid. It's very hard. And this is what many people who are addicted to methamphetamines or marijuana or alcohol, they want
Mhm.
to chase those memories away. They haven't hidden those memories enough. Those memories are all there, just floating around just beneath the surface.
Mhm.
And if you don't have the skills to lock it away like I did, then you're you're going to you're just going to drown yourself in some other way so that you don't think about those things.
So did you, I mean, are you like new to therapy? Like, did you take a long time, like into your adult
No,
before you even
no. See,
started?
well, that's an important question, because most people do not disclose their trauma until they're in their 50s, the fifth decade. They don't come out until now. And now I understand why. How old is my mom? My mom's 82 years old. How much does she really have left? Max 10 years, but probably not, maybe 5 with all of her medical conditions.
Mhm.
Um, she might be on her deathbed now, for all I know. My father died 2 years ago. And so I think what ends up happening is that we're in our 50s, and we look at our parents and we look at how frail they are, and we look at how they need taken care of, and now we got to step up and take care of this person, and we start recognizing what happened way back
Yeah.
then. We're looking at,
Right.
well, why should I take care of this person? And but then you're guilted by other family members or friends. Oh, but she's your mother. Oh, but she's your mother.
Right.
No, it doesn't matter.
No, I understand that, and I've seen
Yeah,
that before too, but I'm just curious,
yeah.
like you didn't did you start any of your own personal work like sooner than now? Like,
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
when I
work on
was,
your
yeah,
sexual
when
abuse
I was
history?
in, so I tried, I went to speak to a therapist when I was in college, and then I got shut down pretty rapidly by the response because the therapist had said, "Look at your body, look at your body language. You know,
Hmm.
your clothes." And what I read from that was someone's pointing to me and criticizing me. And what really needed to happen was what I needed to have happen was I needed to make sure that I was safe.
Hmm.
And when you have someone disclosing to you for the first time, one, you want to know, is this the first time that you've ever told anyone about this? Okay, if this is the first time, do you feel safe telling me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you need to establish safety. And I was not safe because I was still getting abused when I went back home. And
Oh,
parents weekend was a nightmare. It meant, when my
okay.
parents were coming to visit, oh, it's a nightmare. He's
Okay.
around again. And so I never felt safe. And so I didn't pursue therapy because no one can guarantee that I was safe and that
Even
everything
so
was going to be
after
okay.
college and like after, you went to
And then
medical
after
school.
college, yeah, well, so I was back home for a year after college. And then in medical school, it was my housemate who confronted me about what is that relationship about. Like he saw something that was just not
Mhm.
right. And he confronted me about it. And then I just kind of hedged. I let him guess it. And he figured it out. He
Yeah.
figured out that the man that keeps coming up here, that's her fiance, was married to her mother. And yeah, and he continued that facade because it allowed the statute of limitations for crooning to run out.
Hmm.
Because I suspect, because I was starting to disclose during college, and I suspect that he was afraid that I would disclose fully, and then
Right.
he would end up going to prison for child molestation.
Okay.
So yeah,
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I feel like we
so he
could
tagged
unpack
me
so much.
along with his
Yeah, I guess I
psychopathic
was just asking
brutality.
it
Yeah,
because, usually people will have either symptomatic experience or like just a lot of problems in relationships. I mean, you went through medical school, so you at least got some, I know there's not a lot, maybe the DO program had more, like you had some like kind of training on mental health and like what some of these things were. And then like
mm-hmm.
usually things will start to show up like failed relationships, bad communication, just not feeling good about yourself, lots of things, right? So that
Yeah,
lead us to, geez, I can't do this by myself. And like lead us someplace that's going to like start to unpack some of that history.
yeah, yeah. So I had a psychiatrist throughout medical school, throughout the entire time. I was seeing, in addition to doing medical school, I was also doing therapy 2 to 3 days a week, which was very intensive therapy
Okay.
on top of medical school. So it was quite a bit. And she was a distance, so I had to drive back and forth. So it took up considerable time, but it was worth it for me at that moment because it was the support that I needed. And, but, and I adjusted therapy depending on, there were sometimes I would go down to twice a week or just to once a week because it was the GI module that we were studying, and things were really intense with the amount of information that I had to learn. So I was learning all of that information that I needed to become a doctor at the same time that I'm trying to unpack what has happened to me for the past 24 years. And so it was not an easy journey. It was not a pretty journey. There were times where I failed classes and had to take them again. And, but I had that persistence, that stick to itiveness where I could get up and go again. And, I've always been impressed with the body's need to survive and the
Yeah.
body's need to keep going. I
Hmm.
think that here I am in my 50s and I've just realized I can't keep going like this.
Yeah, so like yeah,
Yeah.
and it's true like age does sort of break us down. We don't
Yeah.
have the same tolerance level and we don't have the same stamina. I mean, even if we're really energetic, we take good care of ourselves, like there is a breakdown, we're
Yeah.
not 20, And so
Right.
and I think sometimes yes, that's the next logical step is like, what else can I do that's going to help me, be my best self? And so more is revealed. And certainly in parenting your own children, more is revealed, and then usually things will, in my experience personally, and then also with clients, like things will come up, right? And you'll start to be like,
Exactly.
oh, when your kid reaches this particular age, and like you might be like, oh my God, I have a hard
Exactly.
time.
Exactly.
And
When
so
you look,
that's usually what
yeah,
sends people into our rooms. Um, so, I
you're
mean,
right.
in the
It
spirit of
does.
time, I know we have like, unfortunately, I wish we could talk for 2 more hours, and maybe we'll have to come and do another follow-up episode.
Maybe we do.
But yeah, I'm just curious if you could say, just in like in the quickest version possible, like when you kind of think about your program now, like your program, whatever that is, your personal
Mhm.
program, not the psychedelics necessarily, although that's part of it, but like what are like the main like two or three kind of main like tools that you utilize like
Yeah.
on a daily basis or very regularly that just really help, keep you on that path?
Right. Gratuity is the first thing. I start every morning. I go downstairs. I get my coffee. I come up. I sit in bed. I
Mhm.
pull out my journal and I write down what I'm grateful for, at least two, three, four things. Sometimes the list is long. Sometimes I can only do one thing.
Mhm.
Sometimes I'm just not feeling it. Okay. I'm grateful I have this journey, this journal to keep in today. Something small and detailed, whatever it is, just always bring gratuity in your life.
Yeah.
Meditation is really important, and a practice at least once a day, twice a day. I like yoga nidra at night because it helps put me back into my body and it helps me focus on particular places in my body. There were certainly dissociative episodes while I was being raped by my stepfather, so that
Mm.
helps bring me back there.
Mm.
And starting meditation in the morning. I practice the Silva method,
Mm.
and it also is a very body centered or any kind of body centering type of meditation is helpful. Those are the two things. The other thing I do is the vagus nerve. So people when they've gone through trauma, they can have a dysfunctional vagus nerve. That vagus nerve is always turned on and never wants to shut down. And it's learning to regulate that, bringing it up or bringing it down, depending on what your mood is. Some people do that through drumming. Some people do that from maybe singing. Some people will do tapping to help bring that. I find music to be super helpful. I
Mm.
have two playlists that I personally use, one that I created, one that I found on Spotify.
Mm.
The one on Spotify is the polyvagal response.
Mm.
And my other one is called Waltz List because I created that for a friend and then ended up using it myself. So the polyvagal one gets me up in the morning. If I'm feeling like I can't move because I'm in shutdown mode, then that playlist gets me going.
Mhm.
If I feel like I've got way too much nervous energy and I can't focus and I can't get one thing done, then I go to the other one
Okay.
because that slows me down and gets me steady. So I get them so that they steady me.
Yeah.
And so I found music to be very helpful. Some people can get agitated from the music. If that's the case, you got to shut it off,
Yeah.
right? You just shut
Right.
it off, change gears,
Not for
whatever.
you.
Yeah, right. That one's not for
Yeah.
you. But I very frequently have my phone in my pocket, music turned on, my earpiece in, because I'm listening to music
Mhm.
most of the day, unless I'm listening to videos or something. And that music has been tremendously helpful in regulating everything that I need.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing those. Those are really, really
Sure.
helpful.
Yeah.
And I didn't know about the Vegas nerve music. Like I use
Yeah.
EMDR sounds a lot.
Right.
I've noticed that when I was younger, obviously I have pretty significant ADHD. But it really, I think recovery work was able to help me manage that
Yes.
from when I was younger, for a long time, and like whatever was was happening. But then in my later 40s, like maybe 2 years ago or whatever, I started to notice that things were really ramping up, and
Hmm.
like it was like becoming some things were becoming very unmanageable,
Hmm.
and I needed a different kind of support. So I think that's
Right.
just the perimenopause, but linked to
You
those
need hormones. Yes, for sure.
yeah, I just needed something else like to help with those like that symptomatic experience that I could no longer like control myself. So
Right.
um but yeah, I think so I used to be able to multitask and like watch TV while I was working, and you do a bunch of stuff, and like I cannot do that anymore at all.
Right.
So now I'll put on those kinds of sounds which give that bilateral stimulation like while I'm
Exactly.
doing notes or researching or whatever. And I find that to be like, so it definitely does help me like self-soothe and like get into that space where I'm like, okay, I can do this task. Like I can focus on
Exactly.
this. And I love that we have access to this stuff. I'm a Spotify member as well, so it's included for me.
Yeah.
But I think we can even access things other ways too. So I really want to thank you so much for your
You're
time and
welcome.
for your work too, and for sharing that with us. So when people want to kind of get in touch with you or reach out, how do you like them to do that?
They can reach out by my website. It's drrisleychilds.com. So it's DRRISLEYCHILDS.com. And they can go buy my book. I have The Offering, A Physician's Journey Through Abuse, Psychedelics, and the Freedom of Forgiveness. You got to put in the whole title
Yep.
in Amazon. It's available on Amazon. Buy
Perfect.
the paperback. The hardcover is still in a little progress right now, but I've had to update some things a few times with it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Perfect. I'll make sure I link
yeah,
to both of those in the show notes so people have access very easily.
sure,
And again, just thank you so much for your time. Hopefully we'll reconnect again, maybe a few months down the road and kind of check in, see how things are going, and reconnect on some of the other topics that we didn't have time for today, because there's certainly so much more that we could talk about. So thank you
yes,
again.
absolutely.
And I hope you have a phenomenal